Hi, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Jonelle.
And I'm Karen.
And we are a mother-daughter duo here to unpack our privileges, talk about some tough conversations free of shame, and just get into some really fun topics. So I have the topic today, but I know you have some things you want to go over.
Yeah,
so do you want to kick us off?
Well, I have to share. We got some feedback. One thing I wanted to note, the best way to give us feedback is to email us at hello@whitewomenwakeup.com.
Yes.
So we got one of our first bits of, well, we've gotten other feedback, but this one was a really good one because it asked for our thoughts. And I thought, oh my gosh. We're not trying to claim to be experts here. We're just trying to claim that we want to have that conversation. And this particular person kind of outlined that our podcast was giving them some courage, or this person, this white woman, giving them courage and also helping them to have conversations with their neighbors, and where both of them kind of don't necessarily agree with things. And so one of the things that she was asking was, when she posts things on social media, like, forwards an article or something, is that performative activism? And I started thinking, for my own self, I'll just respond for my own self.
Great.
Is performative activism, I think, there's an underlying motive on that. Like, if I'm doing activism in a way that's just pointing to me like, oh, I'm part of this crowd, then I'm not sure if that's really true activism, where activism is really about being actively engaged. And when she talked about this idea of, engaging with her neighbor in real conversations, challenging one another, I don't see that as performative activism. I also questioned when she said she forwarded articles. I said, one of the things that I'm learning is I need to do research on the articles that I'm forwarding so that I'm just not forwarding someone else's stuff. And I need to make sure that I'm in agreement, or I'm backing, or I'm asking questions around what I'm forwarding so it makes my engagement real. And so anyways, it was just great to get feedback and great to have a question to ask.
Yeah, no, yeah. I love from what I gathered from her email was, again, that we have done exactly what we kind of hoped we would be doing with this podcast, which is given people the tools to have open, shame-free conversations, especially when you disagree. These are hard topics, but we don't want to shy away from them. That's definitely tends to be the white women MO. We really want to go and head first into them, but then how do we navigate that? Yeah. And so I love that she felt so supported by our conversations. It's exactly what we're trying to do. And my take is a little bit different on performative activism. Yeah. I think it's one step further than just motivation, because I do think there's a lot of people out there who might have true, solid motivations when they're posting stuff on social media, when they're having conversations. I think what switches it from performative to kind of the baseline of allyship is if there's risk involved.
Yes.
If you are like asserting yourself, you're putting yourself out there, and it's not in a space of comfort. And I don't mean like there needs to be big risks, like you're losing your job. That doesn't need to happen right now, but just to get some sort of baseline allyship beyond performative activism, you do need to put yourself out there. And I think this is what this woman's doing. She has taken from just posting on social media to the next step and actually having tough conversations with people of different opinions. And so thank you. It made our week to get that email.
Actually, I like what you said about taking risks, and I also would put it one step further. It often makes us uncomfortable, and we have to be comfortable in being uncomfortable.
Did I not say discomfort?
No, well, maybe you did, but I just heard the risk. I
just
part.
said that.
Yeah, because I do think that's part of it. Okay. And I really appreciate that, because I think that's one thing I'm trying to learn is have courage around my discomfort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Okay, Jonelle, it's your turn this week.
Okay.
What topic are we going to talk about?
It
makes me nervous.
You get nervous every time, as if listeners, I feel like this gives so much into the psyche of our relationship, of how she fears that I'm just going to drop these bombs of conversations on her. And that's not my intent. My intent is to have great conversations, healthy starting places.
I always have to think. It
well,
can be hard.
Well, if that's what scares you, then I don't blame you then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing things slightly different today, where it is technically one topic, but it's going to be a multitude of back and forth stuff. And so this kind of actually has come about from our last 2 podcasts. We talked about colorblindness, which I know was possibly a new vocab word for a lot of listeners. Last time we talked about cultural fit, which is just kind of this, tag word of corporate America.
For gatekeeping.
Gatekeeping, exactly. All of these terms that we're throwing out there. And then I heard something really interesting on social media this week around the idiom black and white thinking and how that is rooted in racism.
Oh, yeah.
And which it's like, duh, but...
So, you mean the notion of dualistic thinking, black and white?
No, the term black and white thinking.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I want to approach today is there are so many idioms out there that we use all the time, and some might be very obvious to some listeners, some might not be. There are ones that will be on this list that I've known are kind of, I need to stay away from now, like now that I understand the historical context, some that I was very surprised by. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to just bring us through a bunch of idioms that a lot of people use in their life.
Oh, great.
And we're going to talk through them because some were kind of surprising to me. So black and white thinking, that's the first
Totally
one.
know it. I can speak into that.
Great. When you think about it, it makes total sense why this is not an appropriate term. It's divisive. It shows...
Well, it's not that the term isn't appropriate. It's the process isn't appropriate.
No, that's not what I'm saying. The term itself has...
Would you use a term that would be inappropriate?
So black and white thinking is the inappropriate term. Black and white thinking is rooted in talking about racial divides.
Yeah.
So like better ways to say it would be like nuanced thinking. Or even...
Well, I was going to talk about the process of black and white thinking. I think the challenge with black and white thinking...
Sure.
Okay.
That's not my...
I want to bring this point up. Because I think the problem, it gets back to the root of everything we're talking about. It is... Black and white thinking is this way or that way. And typically, because this way is under the umbrella of the dominant culture, which in the United States happens to be white, it's rooted in this kind of white dominance of yes or no. And so when we think about non-dual, so in my spiritual world, we use the language of dualism.
Yeah.
And so when we think about non-dual conversations, what we're talking about is opening them up to other people's opinion.
Yes.
And so black and white thinking is a dangerous way to think because it doesn't allow us to hear different points of view. It doesn't allow us to get nuances. Nuances are everything.
Yeah.
And so that's the danger of that dualism of thinking. Now, as a idiom, sure, I could see how black and white, it could have come from that space.
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought about it that way. I would have just actually thought about the whole meaning as centered under racism.
Which makes total sense. I think some of these other ones, I don't think you'll go as deep in with, you'll shock, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Even the concept of black and white thinking is very problematic. Yeah. It doesn't leave space for gray and context.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up because this is one of the things that I think if we're not into this journey of growth, we might be in a community where we're having conversations with persons of color and we might be like, well, we might say that word black and white thinking. And they may get offended, and then we would be defensive of the offendedness, right? Instead of us actually looking at how we unpack this.
Yes.
In my world, I don't mean to talk a little bit more.
No, go for it.
But in the design world, there's been a lot of dialogue around human-centered design being very racist because even though the concept of human-centered design is a good concept, in other words, we're going to get people's points of view before we design something. But often the people points of view we're getting are in a white centric circle.
Yeah.
So that's where the supremacy or the racism happens.
Yes. Well, and we could go on a total tangent around.
So anyways,
like the medical system, safety systems, how they're all typically performed around white men. And so it's really focused actually on those needs. But anyways, so let's kind of dig in. And this is not to bring any shame to anyone if you use these phrases. I will say my dad actually even used one of these phrases the other day, and I called him out on it, and he was really surprised and asked, like, well, what can I say differently? So we'll start with the phrase he used. Sorry. Okay. Hopefully won't be embarrassed. He called something ghetto. He referenced something ghetto. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, that's not an appropriate term to use. Yeah. Because it essentially disenfranchises, groups of people. It's taking a concept of where people lived and associating it with negative, harmful, problematic terms.
Yeah. Well, I think this goes back to what Ray said. I mean, we embed negative interpretations to those things. So if we were using the word ghetto as a beautiful, mansion that was lovely, but there's a negative interpretation to that.
Well, I mean, I think it goes beyond embedding negative terms.
But that's why these terms end up being, I mean, was he using the word ghetto in a positive way?
No, not at all. But I think it's beyond embedding just negativeness I see what you're saying. Yeah. But I think that still simplifies what people have done with these phrases. Yeah. And I think because some of these phrases you'll see are actually pretty neutral and stuff, but they come from places that aren't neutral. Yeah. So we should think about it. Yeah. But so ghetto. And so then, but what was great is I loved how he responded. He said, oh, well, what should I say instead? Yeah. And I think that's like such the appropriate term when someone is like, hey, you know what? This actually, like, this learning lesson, it's not right anymore. And I told them we can say, we can use actual descriptive terms. Like that place seemed a little, it just seemed a little scary. The place that he was referencing, it was a store that we talked.
So it was negative.
The place seems a little dangerous, maybe not kept up, not tidy. And so there's plenty of other things we can do, but I think we often get caught in these idioms and we don't recognize where they come from.
Yeah. But, I also have to say one of the things, the fact that he was willing to ask that, because all of that is a language of patience, which he doesn't usually have a lot of patience, but the fact that he had patience in that one and not being defensive, because I know if I'm using language and I'm trying to describe something and someone comes back to me and says, did you kind of think about that? Maybe you'd want to use another term. I tend to put my defensive radar on. And I really appreciate that he allowed you to kind of have the conversation to talk about that.
Yeah, no.
But I would agree, I think, and especially speaking from an I point of view, I don't often use the term. If I use the term ghetto, it wouldn't necessarily be a favorable term. So then why am I using it?
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. So this is another one that I think is more obvious to most, but we're still on this topic of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Indian giver.
Oh, I know. I know.
This is, and one of my favorite things I've ever heard about this phrase was someone talking about, they're like, Indian giver. The phrase should be white giver, actually. Yeah. Because it's, first of all, the white man is the one that gave and then took back. So even historically, we're not putting it on the right people. And then two, there's obviously so many problematic reasons why we use this phrase in like a negative term.
Well, and I think you're right in that, we're not even using it correctly.
No.
Because if you look at indigenous cultures, giving is such a big part of, they didn't take. There wasn't the language of ownership the way we have the language of ownership. It was shared community values. And so we're not even really assigning, it's like a meaning that, we as white people put on to that subject. And so, In fact, the irony is if we were to say Indian giver, if we were to say it in what it really truly means, it means this level of shared continence. It means this level of shared space. It means this level of non-take. And so, but we don't use it that way.
I mean, but there's even more levels in the fact that Indian is not an appropriate term for Indigenous people.
No.
So that one has a lot of layers to it. So those are some of the bit, I think, more obvious ones. Digging into maybe some, and this is one that I know you know because you've actually told me this before.
But can I back up on the Indian giver one? One of the things that's been really fun about unpacking these idioms, I'm so bad, I don't even know like the word idiom. Anyways, unpacking these idioms is as we've been on this journey and I'm on this journey and researching more and more things, I have to say, like that term, Indian giver, in my own journey with my community in looking at Indigenous persons and the culture of Indigenous persons, I've been able to backtrack and realize, wow, I can see something differently that I didn't see before, which is this language of generosity and also how culturally my Eurocentric culture came into wanting own place. I wanted to say, this is where my yard is. This is my property. Where that kind of thinking was not even a thought process with the, the Indigenous persons in the United States.
Yeah.
That idea of owning property didn't even exist. So anyways, this is great.
I'm going to actually then move to a different word that I think kind of stems off of this. And this is something now, as a continual HGTV watcher, that really drives me crazy if people have not updated this, but master. So master of something or master bedroom.
Yeah.
So a master, it is clear. And again, it's something that we've said in our life over and over again. So it's not until it clicks like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
How problematic and then awful that is. And again, for context of people who might not still be getting it, it's referencing master of slavery. So the master bedroom is referencing
where
the slave owners and where the master is.
Yeah.
And so in the same sense, master of anything is still referencing slave ownership, is referencing, so if you're the master of disguise. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like using those phrases,
the master is the expert.
The expert. Yeah. Using it as terms of an expert is actually, there's other things we can say. Expert is a great example. Or for bedrooms, primary bedroom.
Yeah.
Things of that manner, but really kind of taking away the ownership of the term master. So.
Did you know you used to live, your bedroom was the help bedroom?
I did know that. Growing up, everyone, my bedroom, you had to get through my brother's bedroom, which is other problematic the ways to get to my back bedroom, which technically we grew up in a house that was built in like the early 1900s. And my bedroom even had different flooring than the rest of the house.
Cheaper flooring.
Because it was meant for, servants or
that's
other,
awesome.
Yeah. So master of something.
Master, that's really interesting. And also it's biblical text. It's in a lot of spaces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This one, I have so many of them that are so this one, I actually think you've told me this one before and I didn't realize it, but the term rule of thumb, do you know where rule of thumb comes from?
No.
Oh, maybe it wasn't you then.
No, I didn't.
Okay, rule of thumb.
And I use that a lot.
Awful.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb was actually the legal term of how far a man could beat his wife.
Oh my God.
It was with no thicker than his thumb. With a
So
stick.
the rod.
So
in
you
other
could
words,
rod. Yes. The man could beat a rod no thicker than their thumb.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So that was the rule of thumb.
That is the rule of thumb. I use that term a lot.
Yeah. Isn't that awful?
That's crazy. Talk about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, the more you know, just normalizing violence, normalizing the rule of thumb is rooted in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. This one I actually use, and I am stunned by this one. This one, long time no see.
Long time no see?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Think, see if you can think through it at all.
Long time no see. Is it back to slavery? Like
No.
when someone escaped? No.
No, long time no see was a term mostly used on the West Coast.
Okay.
Later, probably developed closer around like 60s to mock non-English, often Asian descent speakers with how they reinforced their broken English communication.
So wait, how did they give me a context of how it was used originally?
So long time no see was like, if you think about it, long time no see isn't actually a proper English sentence.
No, it's not.
Like when you really kind of break it down.
Yeah.
And so it was started
so they
as
were making
mockery.
They were making some fun of someone's
broken
slang.
English.
Yeah.
No, not slang. Broken English.
Broken English. Yeah.
They were immigrants. So making fun of immigrants and
Yeah. Interesting.
Mostly Asian immigrants.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so interesting where all these things come from.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it became a casual greeting that was intended to mock Asian immigrants.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that
that is so
fascinating?
Crazy. But I think that there's probably many more that we don't even know about.
Well, this is it. This is what I really was unpacking.
Yeah.
For so many things. Okay. Here's another one. Easy as a cakewalk or taking the cake.
Take the cake. I would say, oh, that takes the cake.
Yeah, that takes the cake.
Yeah.
Do you know what a cakewalk was?
No, well, I know what a cakewalk is in like at the carnival, but what was the cakewalk?
So the cakewalk was an original Southern tradition.
Yeah.
Used to, again, as a carnival or a picnic tradition where they had their enslaved people walk and dance for entertainment, and whoever won, the owners won a cake. Isn't that so? It's easy. Yeah. So it's as easy as a cakewalk because they weren't engaged in the cake. It's easy as just throwing your slave out there and you take a cake.
Wow. Yeah, they didn't have to do any work for it.
They didn't have to do any work for it. They just got a cake.
Yeah. Did you find out where Karen comes from?
No, I do know where the term Karen comes from.
Where does it come from?
So, no, Karen is a term within a lot of Black communities referencing the typical white woman.
Yeah, the man of the house, or not that. No, that's terrible.
Oh my gosh, we were just talking about what?
I know.
How do these just come out of your mouth?
I'm sorry.
No, Karen, you're exactly a Karen right now.
Yeah.
Posing as a progressive white woman who is still selling racist idioms.
Yeah.
You are the epitome of your Karenness right now.
We won't cut this because we know I have to be true. Yeah.
Yes. No, and so a Karen similarly is also a Karen who gets involved, put themselves in other people's businesses, often with the premise of helping the community, but it's really rooted often in racial tones, and not and
control,
subconscious,
and still wanting it back their way. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, here's another one.
Okay.
Calling a spade a spade.
Oh my gosh. No, what is this one?
Okay. Do you use that?
No, I do. Call a spade a spade.
A spade is a derogatory term for a Black woman. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was used as a racial slur for Black women in the earliest 20th century. So calling a spade is basically, call it as it is. They're acting like...
Or are you pitting someone against someone? Yeah.
But in a negative tone. Like a spade. We, I think, now use it as they're being who they are.
It's
or calling a spade
a spade. Apples kind
totally.
of thing. Yeah.
But it's referencing, that crazy Black woman is acting
funny now
crazy.
That you even say it. I think about, I just used the term apples to apples.
Yeah.
But when you said calling a spade, it was never used in a positive form. In other words, that person did some harmful behavior. Well,
Yeah.
You're calling a spade a spade.
Yeah.
They're getting what they deserve kind of thing. Oh, that's awful. Oh my gosh.
know.
I am so glad. It's so interesting how some of these terms are incredibly racist.
Yeah.
And we use them without knowing.
Knowing. Okay.
Yeah.
We have time for a couple more.
Okay.
So this is another one that I say all the time because it feels like such a natural phrase to me, and I did not realize that's a whole nother story.
Oh, sure. That I don't know where that's rooted.
Yeah. So
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. So similar to long time no see, nother is a term rooted in just, again, to mimic African, like Black and African languages.
Dialect.
Yeah. And misunderstanding and just mimicking and ridicule.
So in other words, if you heard someone's story and then you as the white person heard the story again, you just kind of flippantly made fun of the way that they told that story? No? Then here, explain it to me.
No. So when we say that's a whole nother story, in our head, I think we're thinking that's a whole other story. But the phrase is actually another story.
Yeah.
And so that term is actually rooted in mimicking American, like African-American vernacular English.
Dialogue. Yeah. That's
like, and that
fascinating.
is fascinating.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things we can say that are different. Okay, here are a couple more that I have to say, and I feel awful, a perpetuator of this. I feel so bad. But saying things like, and I've really had to think about it, like, oh, that was so bipolar. Like the weather this week was so bipolar. And why
would you say
why
that?
can't I say the weather was extreme? The weather was back and forth.
Yeah.
The weather when this has been something that's come up this week
is
that
like
I've noticed.
This is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I say. So the same thing. You're crazy. This is insane.
Yeah.
Crippled with fear, crippled with anxiety.
Yeah.
All of the things that we use, these terms, we use them as adjectives, but they're actually meant for other things. I mean, I think you can go on
I think
calling someone retarded or gay, and how we know those are obvious ones nowadays.
Yeah.
But there's still some ones that sink in there.
But I think what I'm gathering from this conversation is how quick we take these simple terms and apply it to things we've heard in the past, and we haven't thought that someone else might be the recipient of that conversation in a way it can be hurtful. Yeah.
Well, it's in the same sense.
It's almost bully language.
It is. It's bully language, and we use it so easily and fluently that we don't recognize. And so that's what I want to do. We don't recognize some of these things that are actually really harmful. I think there's been so many obvious things that we've talked about as a society, like when it comes to body shaming, how so often women will say, oh, I feel fat today, or I look fat. And they say it in front of someone who is clearly larger than them, and how that, obviously is going to hurt that person's feelings, but no one thinks about that because of the things that we perpetuate. And so this is, again, kind of a shocking list. I really encourage people to Google and find more of just idioms we say with problematic.
I think another way to do it, though, too, is just as you're having conversations, you can hear yourself. And if you hear yourself using language that would have been a derogatory term or a term. Now, some of the ones, like another story I didn't know, but like when you use the conversation of insane or that's bipolar. Yeah. I would hear myself because I've been around enough, and I'm not describing myself. Like if I would say, I feel anxious about that, instead of, oh, that's an anxious Annie or something like that. That's another way of using the term anxious, because I'm not using it as a way to describe myself. I'm using it as to put value on someone else.
Totally. Yeah. I would still also say, though, I do still think that is a great step and place to be. I still think, and some of our listeners there might be a little bit more at where dad was, and not even recognizing that ghetto is not an appropriate term to use. And so this is where I'm saying we're going to be at all different levels of, one, can we recognize it ourselves in conversation? And two, if you can't, again, this goes back to educating yourself. Start looking, start thinking through things, research, like what other things that like might be common phrases I'm saying. I think we have to wrap up soon, but there's two more that I want to tie in together. One, going Dutch. So splitting the bill was very xenophobic to Dutch people who were often seen as stingy and frugal. And I have to call you out on this. A Midwestern term is you and your family always say things, doing it Polish or which means doing a bad job.
Yeah. And I've always felt like I can say it because I'm Polish, but you can't say it. I know. I don't say it at all anymore.
It just perpetuates.
Yeah, I don't say it at all anymore, but I know we used to do that when we were younger. That was a culture that we would make fun of. Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I have. And so I guess homework for the week for everyone on this.
I'm glad, hang on. I'm glad you brought up xenophobia, because I think that xenophobia, we've been doing a lot of kind of dialogue on race, but we haven't done a lot on religion, on culture. And I think we have these biases that we need to check where we're at. I also think one of the lessons that I'm hearing from this topic, which was a great topic, Jonelle, is actually Dad gave the lesson. When we're called out for perhaps saying something that may have been offensive, instead of us being defensive, listen, ask, educate me. What did I say that was offensive? And tell me why that may have hurt you.
Yes.
And I'll learn something from you.
I have something. I don't know if you're going to edit this out or not.
No, I'm not gonna.
Okay. But readers, we have started to work, listeners, you can tell my slip there. We have actually started to work on a book together. And so this week we've been researching a lot on the discomfort cycle and talking around some of these things. And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because that is one of the big pieces about sitting within discomfort is being okay with saying, I did it wrong. I did it wrong. I'm sorry. Please enlighten me, kind of thing. And so it is interesting that you bring it up, because it's been a really fun journey to start the work on this book and research and learn and give our own perspective around our journey with the discomfort cycle and race and feminism and gender identity. And so I think that's a good tie-in to what we're learning this week.
You know me, I'm the queen of comfort. So this has been a really huge journey.
Yeah.
But I do think in the context of this conversation, one of the things we need to be is okay with being uncomfortable that we may have said something wrong, and ask the person, hey, help us out here.
Yes.
Because we're all learning. We're all growing.
We are.
And on that note, I can definitely say thanks for joining us on White Women Wake Up. If you like today's conversation, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Email us at hello@whitewomen.com, or just visit our blog at whitewomen.com.
Whitewomenwakeup.com.
Hello@whitewomenwakeup.com, or Instagram at whitewomenwakeup.com for any more information. We love hearing from you, so send us your thoughts. Let's keep the dialogue going. Until next time, stay curious and keep waking up.
Yes, bye. Everyone.
Hey, Jonelle.
Hello.
Welcome to White Women Wake Up.
Okay. 1